Star Wars Aftermath. It's a book that's been a big issue for a lot of people. It's not as bad as a lot of people claim, but there certainly are still issues here. On the other hand though, it does a couple of things few Star Wars books have ever done, and they work in its favour. Aftermath is book 1 in the Aftermath trilogy. Duh. It's set a few months after Return of the Jedi and mostly follows Norra Wexley, a rebel pilot who flew an A-Wing into the Death Star, the second Death Star, and I think you actually see her in Return of the Jedi. She's got like an egg-shaped head because she seems to have a nappy on her head like Dengar does. And it's also about her son Temmin Wexley. Something I hate in books is realising halfway through or near the end of the book that one of the characters you've been reading about is actually a character you know from one of the movies, and the Death Star novel was particularly bad for this. So I'll tell you now because it's not a spoiler. Temmin is... what's his name? Greg Greenberg? The fat one from The Force Awakens? Matt Parkman from Not Lost, Heroes, and Captain Kirk's, the voice of Captain Kirk's stepdad in the new one, and in the latest Star Trek movie, he's that fat guy in the operator, well, not operator room, but like this control room. That's that guy. The X-Men pilot is Temmin. It's him and his mum, but this is Temmin when he's a teenager. And I instantly have a problem with that, because I can't imagine Matt Parkman as a teenager. He's just too old, and obviously he must have been at some point. I'm not stupid, but it's just beyond the realms of where my mind can go. I like Star Wars, I like Lord of the Rings, I like Game of Thrones, I like Harlan Coben, I like Dan Brown, I like Spider-Man, I like X-Men. Don't like the Avengers. So clearly my imagination will go places, but it will not go to this fat guy being a teenager. He's fat and hairy. It's hard to imagine him as this skinny teenager the way Chuck Wendig has written him. No offence, Greg, if you're listening. Also, one of my favourite characters from the new canon is in it. Grand Admiral Ray Sloane. Last time she was in a novel was when she was introduced in A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller, which, by the way, was an excellent novel. She was trying to become a captain then of her own Star Destroyer. This time round, she's a Grand Admiral, and she gets one of those white uniforms that they're just handing out at Disney. The story centres around Norra Wexley returning home after the war to find her son being an independent young man, sometimes in ways she disapproves of. So their character arc is about how they cope with each other while trying to deal with the Imperials. Sloane's story is about how she tries to stop the Empire crumbling after the destruction of the second Death Star, Vader and the Emperor himself. She has a secret meeting with other higher ranking Imperials to try and keep some order for the Empire, to stop it crumbling, imploding on itself. But she has the misfortune of doing it over the planet Akiva, aka the Wexleys' home planet. This essentially is how the story winds together into one book. The characters are okay, but there isn't really much growth, to be honest. I think it's understandable for Norra to be a bit PTSD. After all, she did fly into the Death Star with Wedge and Lando. Remember Lando? He used to be a Star Wars character back in the day. If he's not going to be in The Last Jedi, I'm going to be pissed. But yeah, Norra's allowed to be a bit on edge. Flying into the Death Star is enough to give anyone nightmares. Temmin is just a bit of a bitch, to be honest. He's whining and giving attitude all the time. I understand he's a teenager, but it felt like he was just doing it because the plot demanded he be like that. So there was some healing to be done with him and Nora. His parents, both of them, fought for the rebellion, and he bitches that he was left alone, basically. But in the real world, people's parents go to war, and more often than not, they understand, even if they don't like it, that they are serving a higher purpose. Temin just seems to be carrying a chip on his shoulder throughout the whole book, and it's kind of unreasonable, and it's not particularly entertaining to read. I mean, he was looked after by his aunt and her girlfriend. So he was looked after by family, he was given free rein to, you know, become his own person as well. So it's not like he... A lot of people have it a lot worse in the real world and in the Star Wars universe. So him bitching the amount he does, it's just kind of irritating to keep reading it. Even Grand Admiral Rae Sloane, I love the fact that she's a Grand Admiral now, but she doesn't have much of an arc. She goes to a meeting, there's a bit of trouble, but there's just not much character development there. She's in the last few pages too, and they introduce a new character. We don't find out his name till the next book, which I'm reading at the moment, but he seems like he'll be an interesting character. But the most interesting thing with Rae Sloane happens on the last page, and that's the only page where she has an interesting thing. I mean, there is a funny thing with Wedge, but there's not character growth, that's more of a situational thing. Jasimari is a bounty hunter, and her auntie was actually in the Clone Wars. She was her auntie was the Russian sounding Zabrak bounty hunter in the episode of the Clone Wars where I think it was Obi-Wan and Anakin were stranded on... Oh, I think Ahsoka might have been there as well. Stranded on a planet, and the farmers on the planet they landed on, they'd hired a group of bounty hunters to help protect the land, and then they teamed up together. Well, that Zabrak bounty hunter, the Russian sounding grey one, that's... what's her name? Sugi or something. Jasimari is her nephew. And there's Admiral Ackbar, apparently. He was just fucking ridiculous in Aftermath. I mean, forget character growth with Ackbar. Chuck Wendig has just taken the piss with him, to be honest. Take it back to the beginning when we first saw Ackbar. It's a trap, right? He was a strategist and an admiral. He commanded the rebel fleet. You could take it back to the Clone Wars cartoon show as well, if you want. So, like 20 years before, which would make it 25 years before Aftermath, there was those 3 episodes on Mon Calamari where he was a captain and he was fighting to free both species on the planet from separatist control. But even then he seemed kind of middle-aged. Well, Chuck Wendig decided it wasn't enough that he's become a seasoned and talented admiral and strategist. If you've kept up with Rebels, then you've seen Thrawn's introduction. You know, the one where he's training and jumping around the room, fighting robots. Well, for some reason that I just can't understand, Wendig decided Ackbar should be more like that. So there's actually a scene where Akbar is training and he's got his top off and he's all sweaty like a fish gets, and he's jumping around fighting hologram enemies with nunchucks or something, and I just thought it was fucking ridiculous. There was no need to inject that type of character into Admiral Akbar. It was unnecessary and it didn't fit into his already established character at all, in my opinion. It was a foolish thing to include. Admiral Akbar was already a good character as he was. Why change something? It's like reinventing the wheel. You're just doing it for the sake of it, and it just makes no sense to do it. Mr. Bones is a battle droid that Temin has rescued from a scrap heap and rebuilt, decorating him with bones to make him look scary. He actually has some of the best lines in the book. He's the comic relief and he's quite entertaining, and like I said, I'm reading Life Debt at the moment, and even in Life Debt he still has some of the best lines. I'm about a quarter of the way through Life Debt and Mr. Bones still has the best, funniest lines. The problem with all these characters, except for Mr. Bones, because it's allowed with him because he's a robot, is that they're all kind of bland, and any growth the characters experience happens far too late in the book for me to care. I think it would have been better to stagger the growth of the characters, because there are 5 characters, something like that, main characters, who are together for a fair amount of the book. So I think it would have been better to stagger the growth of the characters, so some grew earlier, some grew later, but having them all develop pretty much near the end of the book doesn't do it for me. It's just predictable. There's just no reason why everybody had to have an epiphany or a little bit of character growth at the end of the book, when there's a whole book there where certain characters could have done it throughout the book. Here's a hot topic. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the gay characters, and let me just make this very, very clear right now. I have no problem whatsoever having gay characters in my Star Wars novels. It's a part of the character. They're people, so why not? So I have no issue with them being in Aftermath. If they want to have them in the movies, I've got no problem with that either. I genuinely do not care. I don't have an issue with it. Apparently a lot of people do, because there's been criticism about it, but then I think a lot of people just haven't bothered to say that they don't care, because it's not an issue for them, and you don't talk about a non-issue. My issue isn't that there's gay people in the book. However, having said that, I think Chuck Wendig went completely the wrong way about introducing gay characters to the Star Wars universe. When I started reading the book, pretty soon you discover that Temin's auntie is gay. It was mentioned, and then Wendig moved on. I thought, great, that's how you do it. You mention it, you leave it alone. You don't draw attention to it. Otherwise, you're trying to pay too much attention to something that doesn't deserve that much attention. If there's a straight character in a book, you don't point out, oh, by the way, he's straight. So, you know, okay, point it out that a character's gay so we know, and then leave it alone. Let the character be the character. That's fine, that's perfect. I think that's a good way to do it. There's no need to dwell on it, because dwelling on it will just seem like you're trying too hard. Just acknowledge the character is gay. Have the character and that character's partner, or whatever, be part of the book and stuff like that. But don't keep mentioning, they're gay, they're gay, they're gay. And this is the way Wendig did it, and I liked it. The gay aunt was introduced, as was her girlfriend. They both had speaking parts, you know, fantastic. I thought to myself, if this is why people are getting upset about gay people being in Star Wars, then they're just being petty and ridiculous, and need to grow up, because there's nothing wrong with that. One of the main characters is gay, and I won't say who, because the whole point of a book is to discover the story on your own. That character was okay. I have to really be careful not to give away the sex of the character, otherwise it will spoil it a bit. Now, when I say they were okay, bear in mind none of the characters were above okay in this book. So when I say they were okay, that's actually pretty high praise as far as Aftermath characters go. Again, at some point it's mentioned about the character's sexuality. It's talked about, and then Wendig moves on. Fantastic. Check that out. 2 gay characters, one a main character and one a side character, both with speaking parts. Three if you count Temin's aunt's girlfriend. So 3 characters. I'm not sure if the aunt's girlfriend speaks, but that's 3 characters. At least 2 of them have speaking parts. Introduced into the Star Wars universe in the same book. Well done, Wendig. 2 thumbs up. Well done. And you did it well. See, I'm okay with gay people in real life, so I don't have issue with them being in the books or the movies. However, Wendig, he just went too far, and he wrecked it, in my opinion. You see, the problem is, we've already got 2 gay characters who... And this is the important thing. They add something to the book. They actually add something to the book and are gay. That, in and of itself, isn't the problem. The problem for me is at one point in the book, in one of the little interludes, and I think in this interlude, the character's having a daydream or remembering the past, Wendig decided to introduce about 4 gay characters that we never hear from, don't add anything to the book, the plot, the story, they don't speak, nothing. This is where it becomes an issue for me, when it's just throwing gay people in just because he can. I was fine with having gay people in, they added to the story. Sexuality wasn't an issue then, but when you're pointing out that characters that don't have speaking parts and don't add anything to the story in the slightest, when you're telling the reader about these characters' sexuality, why? Why? It just makes no sense to me. I wouldn't expect if Luke Skywalker was having a dream, or thinking of a memory of when he was on Tatooine, and I wouldn't expect him to say, he walked past Mos Eisley, and he walked past the guard, and the guard was straight. Well, does the guard speak to Luke at all? No. Does he open a door for Luke? No. Does he add anything to the story? No. Well, then why do we need to know his sexuality? What's the point? See, this is my issue with the way Wendig has done it. It's not that gay people are in it, it's the fact that he's taken the piss. He's just throwing gay people in just because he can. He's saying, hey, look at me, uncle, I put gay people in Star Wars. Do you know what? Yeah, you did, and well done, seriously well done, but then you completely undermined it. You had 2 gay characters that mattered. They added to the story. They added to the characters, you know, like their past and stuff, who they are. Great way to do it, by having gay characters be important. No one can say they're only gay because he's trying to be trendy, or that they weren't important to the story, because they're both in one. But then he completely undermines it by adding 4 gay people in a fucking daydream who have no speaking part, nothing to do with the story. So we absolutely do not need to know their sexuality, so he's clearly just pointing it out because he can. And that undermines having a quality character that's gay. At that point, you're just telling people, oh look, the 4 people, man. He was like, oh yeah, got people over there, those 2 are gay and those 2 are gay. And then the guy just walks past. I just think, I can't believe he went that far and undermined his own work. find it ridiculous. That is Wendig trying to be hip and cool and down with the kids, and it's overkill in my opinion. He should have left it with just the two characters being gay, or hey, even a third or a fourth, as long as those characters mattered, were important, added to the story. It would have had some weight to it then. He's decreased the value of having gay characters by making the Wold and his wife gay, even though we shouldn't know if the Wold and his wife's gay because they're irrelevant characters. And that's a shame in my opinion. I honestly wanted him to do it well. You see, the real issue with this book is its author. And I know that sounds obvious, but really he is the problem. He's been bragging that he wrote the book in 30 days. Do you know what? It fucking shows. There's grammatical errors all over the place. There's bland characters. There's a weak plot, to be honest. None of it has been done well. He should have spent at least a few months and got it right. Like I said, I'm reading Life Debt at the moment, and I'm going to use an example from that because I'm not going through Aftermath again just to find issues, and I should have taken notes, but I didn't think of it at the time. So I'll use an example from Life Debt. His overall style was better in Life Debt, but it's still more of the same. It's just, instead of being 50% of what it should be, now it's 80% of what it should be. But I'm about 100 pages in, and I swear the grammar is worse. He needs a new editor or proofreader or something. I've just got through a passage in Life Debt where every time the word her is used, as in it's hers, H-E-R-S, it's replaced with Z-H-E-R, Zer. Every single time in that passage, which is about 4 pages long. At first I thought it was a character, but I thought it was odd that the character's name didn't start with a capital letter. Then I realised they've done the same thing for she in the same passage. It's been replaced but with Z, Z-H-E, as in like she was there. It's now printed as Z was there. Clearly someone's gone around copy pasting she and her, and they've pressed the Z key before pressing control, or and what they've copied is they've missed off the first letter. I don't know. I don't know how 4 pages of every time her and she is misspelled Z and Z gets past a proofreader or an editor or the entire fucking people at Disney. How did he not notice himself when he was reading it? We're getting this same bullshit 2 books in a row, and this isn't on. Disney makes enough money on Star Wars for every single book to be grammatically perfect. This is just sloppy and lazy. And to be honest, it's an insult to the fans, the people who buy these books at £20 a book. That's $30 for you lot over there, right? Then they have to sit there. Seriously, this 4-page fucking passage took me 20 minutes to get through, because the book, I had to translate it into fucking English, even though it's the English version of the fucking book. That detracts from the whole experience of the book like you wouldn't believe, because you cannot take in the story in a seamless, smooth way you normally would. If you have to translate stuff, translate typos all over the place. This should not have come out in this state. Now, I know I'm talking about Life Debt, but Aftermath had similar things dotted throughout the book. Oh, talking about Aftermath, right. I'm getting really sick and tired of Star Wars authors. Claudia Gray did it a little bit, and I didn't mind because I enjoyed Lost Stars, so I let it go with that one. Chuck Wendig has done it too much. stop putting entire paragraphs in brackets. Mate, listen, if you can fit an entire paragraph in brackets, it doesn't need to be in fucking brackets. It's a fucking paragraph. It's that simple. Brackets are for short notes, just to amend something that came before it. Paragraphs are paragraphs. They're for entire explanations and pieces of text. You do not need 2 or 3 sentences in brackets. Again, this shit, and this was in Aftermath, the first book, this shit should not get to printing. This should have been fixed. Who's the proofreader? Fucking fire him. Who's the editor? Send him to the Arctic or something, man. This is not fair on people who pay. Do you know what? There's kids out there whose parents buy them these books. And I don't think they would be happy to know, because I'm sure a lot of them don't read the books, but the kids do. And I don't think a lot of them would be happy to know that they're wasting £20, or even if it's a paperback version, like £8, on a book that's... This kid is going to read this book and just soak it in, and he's going to be soaking in the wrong words, or he's going to struggle, or he's going to get a headache. And the quality control is shit. Utter shit. And he should be ashamed of himself for putting his name on such a poor quality Star Wars novel. He should be ashamed of himself for fucking bragging that he wrote it in 30 fucking days. He should be ashamed of himself for acting like some staunch defender of gay rights, when actually what he's done is used gay people's sexuality to sell a book, rather than do it properly, introducing gay characters the proper way and making sure every character that's gay has weight to them, so nobody can say, well, that character shouldn't have been in it because they're gay. Do you know what? Everything he touches... I'm glad Ray Sloane was in the book, but like I said earlier, she didn't have much of a character development like she did in A New Dawn. She was just kind of bland. Everything he's touched turns to shit in this book. He's like the complete opposite of Midas. Instead of turning things to gold, he turns them to shit. I thought Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void was a bad book, but fucking hell, you see, there's glimmers of hope in the story and the plot, but it's his entire presentation that lets it down. To be honest, all of this that I've been saying, I think this is what people have a go at Wendig for. It's not that there are gay people, it's the way he went about it. His complete lack of understanding of the English language. It's the lack of imagination. It's the complete lack of refining his work to at least an acceptable state, fit for the consumer market. So I think a lot of the time, I'm sure there are homophobic people out there ranting about it, but I think also some of the people moaning about having gay people in Star Wars, I think they're moaning, a lot of them will be moaning that he's brought them in the wrong way. They deserved a bit more respect than the way he's done it. To be honest, Life Debt seems better story-wise so far, but the grammar is just so bad. I'm kind of dreading reading Empire's End now, but I have to read it before I read Bloodline, and I have to read both of them before The Last Jedi comes out. Well, anyway, that's the bad stuff out of the way. I'll talk about the good stuff now, because there is some good stuff. It's just outweighed so much by his lacklustre work ethic. Right, good thing number one. There's gay people in it. Do you know what? Gay people are people too. And do you know, they deserve to feel like they're included in the Star Wars universe. Even though I had a rant about the way he brought them into the Star Wars universe, I'm still glad they were brought into the Star Wars universe. I'm sure there's gay people who are fans of Star Wars, and they shouldn't feel excluded because of what, there are no gay people in Star Wars. That's not fair. That's it's not bullying, but it's very much a way to leave someone out in the cold. And you know, why shouldn't there be gay fans of Star Wars? Why shouldn't there be gay characters in Star Wars? Fucking hell, look at Anthony Daniels, right? If you don't like gay people in your Star Wars stuff, you don't like C-3PO, mate. So, you know, I'm glad they're in it now, and good for Disney, because Disney tend to stay away from stuff like this, I think, being such a kid-orientated company. And I think it's very responsible of them to say, do you know what, you can have gay people in Star Wars now, because that says to today's kids, hey, look, one of the characters in Star Wars is gay and he's a good guy. And I think it's a healthy thing for kids to have, because then kids will grow up accepting that some people are gay, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think it's a good, healthy thing, and I think I'd never really thought about it before until they were introduced, but now that they are introduced, yeah, brilliant. What else? I like the alternative way of telling the story, third person present tense. As far as I know, it hasn't been used in the Star Wars novel before. I know there was first person third tense in I, Jedi, one of the old universe books, but not third person present tense. A lot of people seem to have an issue with it, but to be honest, I find it a nice change, and a change is as good as the rest, they say. I still want the rest of the Star Wars novels written in classic third person past tense, but it wasn't a massive issue for him to try it, in my opinion. It's not like it's a deal breaker, but some people are saying it reads like a manuscript, and I can see why that would irritate them, but I don't think it does read like a manuscript. I've got, and I can't bring myself to read it, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Now that is a fucking manuscript. Manuscripts do not have descriptions, emotion, that sort of thing. This is it's just a fully fledged book. It's just present tense, that's all. All the descriptions that you would usually get in a past tense book are still there. Everything is still there, it's just the tense has changed, that's all. So for me, it's not really an issue, but I do like my third person past tense. Star Wars isn't something that I think you should mess around with too much, and the old novels were good because they didn't mix up the formula too much, and I don't want to see them, you know, like bastardise Star Wars by mixing up the formula too much, you know. See, I'm okay with gay people in Star Wars, but I'm not happy about third person present tense. Well, I'm not happy about it, but I would just prefer the standard book third person past tense. I also do enjoy the way Wendig has the characters interact. The character development may be weak, but the way they talk to each other and affect each other is quite enjoyable in Aftermath. So not all his writing is shit, it's just his lack of refinement that is shit. It actually reminded me a little bit of when, what's his name, J. Michael Straczynski and John Romita Jr. used to do Spider-Man. And it reminded me of, there's this one particular page where it's Peter Parker and Ezekiel, I think. Ezekiel? I'm sure it was him. Getting pizza, and do you know what? There's not a Spider-Man thing on the page, and they're just talking about how they get the dough like that in New York, and one of them was saying it's the dough, one of them saying it's the water, and it was just funny to read and seeing these two characters interact like that. But there was no character growth on that page, but the characters were still entertaining, and a lot of Aftermath reminds me of that, because the characters are entertaining in the way they interact, there's just no character growth. Finally, I liked the interludes, the little snippets every few chapters showing a glimpse in the rest of the galaxy, just like in Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. It's been in a few other books as well. I've said it in other reviews and I'll say it again, it's just a nice little nod to the rest of the galaxy, helping combine it into one larger story rather than lots of individual stories that happen to share the same space. And it helps with the immersiveness and believability of the saga as a whole. I actually think Disney are responsible for the interludes because they've been popping up in so many Star Wars novels lately. I can't help but think it's them doing it precisely to create this web of between the stories. Whether it's Disney or Wendig, I don't care, I like them. It just makes everything cohesive and it keeps the timeline straight. The less retcons the better, and the way you avoid retcons is by getting your story straight first. Part of the problem with the old extended universe was the stories were coming out left, right and centre, and while there was a general consensus to try and follow already established events in the hopes of creating one coherent timeline, it didn't always work that way. The main source of this problem was George Lucas. He messed up the chronology by creating the prequels, and that in and of itself wasn't what messed it up. It's the fact that when he did it, he ignored a lot of what happened in the books, forcing writers to try to retcon their work to fix the timeline. And that was a really shitty thing of him to do, because he didn't mind borrowing from the extended universe when he created the prequels. Coruscant, that's an extended universe name. He didn't come up with that. That's from the extended universe. So he didn't mind taking from it, but he didn't mind ignoring what actually happened. I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't. Most of what happened in the prequels couldn't have happened, just with a few minor differences, so that they would have fit in with the already pre-established lore and history, future history as well, of the extended universe. So it was kind of shit of him to steal from the extended universe, but then completely shit on it, you know. Thank God he's gone. Where Disney are having the authors put interludes in, it helps track everything, not just to give the reader a little look outside of the book they're reading, but it helps the authors and Dave Filoni, who I do respect. I don't really like the Clone Wars, but I like Rebels, and he's doing a fantastic job keeping everything in line. It helps Dave Filoni keep track, follow the timeline properly, rather than messing up, which is exactly what happened in Legends, primarily because of George Lucas. It's just a precaution, but I like it. It shows they respect the fans. It shows they respect the fans' money, time and opinions, and that gets my respect. So yeah, Aftermath has its ups and its downs. The downs could have been completely avoided had Wendig simply put the time and effort in to refine the book. It's that simple. The book is let down by sheer laziness. That's long and short of it. Wendig doesn't care about that though. So yeah, Aftermath has its ups and its downs. Downs could have been completely avoided had Wendig simply put the time and effort into refining the book, and you would think he would want to, since it's got his name on it. It's that simple. The book is let down by sheer laziness. But Wendig doesn't care about that. He can brag he wrote a Star Wars book in 30 days. So what, I could write a story in 5 minutes, it doesn't mean it's good. Honestly, Lost Stars was so much better. It was engaging, character growth was off the chart, especially for a Star Wars book. The plot was excellent and I genuinely felt for the characters. Unfortunately, the Aftermath trilogy seems to be the biggest, it seems to be the source of the biggest clues we'll get before The Last Jedi is released. And the clues about who Supreme Commander Snoke is and all that jazz. And I just can't help thinking, if only Claudia Gray had been given the task of writing the Aftermath trilogy, these books would have been excellent. She did such a good job with Lost Stars. I honestly think she should have been given the Aftermath trilogy instead, because he doesn't care. She does. And I'm going to do my Lost Stars review if it's not already up. I've already written it, so if it's not already up, it is coming. And you'll see what I mean in that review about her writing and her respect for the source material. See, instead of getting Claudia Gray, we got a guy who boasts about producing mediocre work in 30 days, then bitches on Twitter at anyone who criticises his style. It's not on, man. I really hope Wendig, I mean, I know he's done Life, Death and Empire's End, but I hope that's it for him. I don't want him involved in the Star Wars universe anymore, because if his quality control is this low, it's just not an enjoyable thing to read, to struggle to read a book that's in English. It's just ridiculous. And the reason he's this lazy is that he doesn't treat the source material with respect. And again, Claudia Gray. Now, as far as I know, she's a new Star Wars author. I don't think I've got anything by her in the old extended universe. Oh, I don't think I have. I've got 70 books now. So she's fucking knocking it out of the park. She's excellent, and I think Lost Stars should have been an adult novel, and then it might have contended with Aftermath, and then maybe we could have got like a Lost Stars trilogy or something, rather than the cack Chuck Wendig gave us. So overall, Aftermath has its ups. Oh yeah, sorry, Claudia Gray, Lost Stars. What I wanted to say is there's a thing on the back cover, and I'll mention this in my Lost Stars review, where it shows she respects the source material, because it says, and I thought this was wicked, she has been a Star Wars fan since she turned 7, and this is the bit I like, and she now insists that transforming her childhood closet into an X-Wing simulator was vital career preparation. I think that is awesome. It shows that she's a fan, she respects the material, and it shines through in Lost Stars. Chuck Wendig does not give a shit, and that shines through in the Aftermath trilogy, or certainly the first book anyway. So yeah, overall Aftermath has its ups and downs, and I would say if you want to, read it, but I would only read it if you absolutely have to read the first one in a trilogy. And I hope that the trilogy will lead to information about the sequel trilogy. If you don't care about who Snoke is or young Temin's adventures, skip it. None of that is in that book anyway. It's in the other 2 Aftermath books, so skip it. Just go straight to the other 2, and if you absolutely need to, ask a friend or something about the characters, because they are in Life Debt. So ask a friend, or go to Wikipedia, right? But you, honestly, just to get a general sense of the characters, and then you'll be alright. You don't need to read Aftermath. It's shit. It really is shit. It had the potential to be a good book, but it's rushed, and it's poorly done overall. And Star Wars fans deserve a lot better than this.